Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today, we have the pleasure of Reed Havens, who's a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. Reed is from Havens Consulting. He's got a ton of experience and helps a lot of folks with guiding their user experiences with advanced reporting features in Power BI. And today he's going to explain how he does that, how he thinks about putting together these experiences, and teaching us a lot about how we use Power BI. So take it away, Reed.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the introductions, Kelly. As Kelly was already mentioning, like one of the things that I've ended up just gathering a lot of experience on over the years is not only building good models for reporting, but also really understanding how to leverage all the important features in Power BI to make sure that the reporting environment is set up in a way that's easy and intuitive for people to use. We'll get into the specifics about what that will be here in just a minute. But for now, what I want to start with is just a little bit of a background on me for those who are less familiar. So I've been doing this now for many years. I'll say that I've been in the analytics business now for about the last 7. Started my own business about 5 years ago, and now for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been working full time under it for whether or not it's been training, just development as well with a lot of the report and model building and architecture for clients. I also teach at the University of Washington, and I've taught at a few other universities. So I found a lot of joy in the mixture of both being able to train and educate people, present at conferences, and at the same time as well to be able to just have fun and play in a sandbox environment and build cool reports that can lead to a lot of really good changes for organizations. So that's kind of the little 2-second bit about me, and then let's also now go in and talk about what we will be going over, for the next about 45 minutes or so. Kelly, or either of you actually, if you wouldn't mind while I have this in full screen, if you can just give me a two time reminders, one when we are 15 minutes till the hour, and one when we're 5, and then one when we're 10 minutes away, just so I can make sure that we can leave time for questions at the end. For all of you, the modules are going to be in front of us that we'll be talking about. What I'd also like to incorporate is at the end of each one of these, I do have a section for questions. So as questions start to come up naturally, feel free to start to type those into the chat window. That way we will make sure that we can answer them once they come up, and you don't have to sit there and try to type them once we get to the questions phase. So I'll leave a little bit of time for them in between each of these, and then at the very end. Now, what I have in front of us is four main topics: understanding bookmark capture states, configuring and formatting buttons, applying measure-based formatting, and implementing report tooltips. Go ahead and get my, here we go, laser pointer. More than likely in this 45 to 50-minute window, we'll be covering the first 3. For those of you who will get the privilege of maybe seeing this later on when I present it for longer periods at conferences and other stuff as well, I also will have time to then talk about report tooltips. But these are kind of 4 cornerstones of features that I feel really helps you deliver a rich and very intuitive user experience for individuals. So let's go ahead and kind of just talk about some ways that we can use bookmarks, and also get a good core understanding of what they are within Power BI and what their features and limitations are. All right. So just as a very brief introduction here, bookmarks essentially allow us to capture the currently configured view in Power BI. And I remember just, Kelly, you were mentioning to go ahead and turn off the camera, so I can do that now. There we go. Okay, perfect. And it basically captures a lot of different things that happen during the design time process. So when you as the developer are building the report, some common examples that we have here are, I want to make sure my laser pointer actually stays up. There we go, so I can point. So being able to capture multiple filter selections for quick navigation, that kind of was the original foundation for this, where you, from the early on periods of bookmarks, when you were creating them, you were able to have like a button that basically allowed you to click it, and then 4 or 5 filter selections would be automatically applied during that section. So it reduces the number of mouse clicks, which just makes for a more intuitive user experience, so they don't have to click multiple times to get to a result that they want. Then they eventually started to add ways to actually change the page visuals and objects through this through the visibility selection, so you can actually toggle and hide. This has allowed for a lot of ways to have like pop-up windows and to toggle visuals between one or another. So lots of cool ways to add dynamic web-like changes for business requirements. And then, of course, assigning all these actions to various buttons. And nowadays, you can also assign them to to images on the page. And most of the time when you make bookmarks, it's usually accessed via the buttons on the page, but there is a bookmarks pane that also can be used by users, though I will say that that's used less often, and I typically build reports to not use the bookmark pane as often as the buttons that I will have dedicated on the page itself. Now, I'm not going to run through each one of these individually, but I will mention that this is going to be a great slide deck that's also going to be available with a link at the end for PDF, so kind of consider this to be a document that you can take with you that'll have a lot of notes and everything. But as you can see, there are many elements that can be captured on the page that fall within a couple of states that we'll discuss here in a second. But a lot of different things that at the time of, say, when you click the Add Bookmark button, all of these various states get captured and snapshotted, which will then allow you to make changes and revert back to them. So many things with bookmarks end up getting captured within those various states that we'll discuss. There we go. And these are the three states that I was referring to. We have three primary ones. We'll be going through an example of the first two for data and display. But data essentially captures filters and slicers and actually a few different things that to me doesn't quite fit within the data category, but it is a cool way that we can use it later on, which is the hierarchy level. So that's actually the level that you've drilled up and down that also gets captured with that data piece. And then for display, visibility and spotlight. And this one is specifically when more of like the user experiences when they are in Power BI service, whether or not a visual is in focus mode. So lots of display options of how the visuals are displayed, how they're highlighted. Those all get captured as well. Current page was one that used to be built where you could have page navigation with bookmarks, but recently with some updates, Microsoft has made it a lot easier to assign page navigation to buttons without actually having to make a bookmark. So that one to me is almost less relevant, if not even kind of more of an outdated state that can be captured now because they have a better solution for that. So we're not going to really talk about that third one, but we will be going over examples of the first two for some demonstrations. A few of the things that I want to mention, this is going to be very important when I show you how to be, when we make bookmarks, is whether or not you should have all visuals versus selected visuals checked. And I will talk about some reasons why we will really want to make sure that we have selected visuals as the one checked to reduce the chance of issues happening when we actually engage and toggle these bookmark states. And bookmarks themselves can also be updated pretty easily. So, if you ever need to make an update in the future, add or remove a visual, change a filter setting, you can recapture the states with the update field. All right. Last thing I'll mention on this slide is that they also can be grouped, which makes it very easy to organize them either by what they do as far as actions go, or in this case, I typically organize them by the page in the report. So that just helps to organize the actual bookmarks, fields or the bookmarks pane over on the right side if users want to use that, or just for a developer just to help provide some breadcrumb trails for you. All right. As far as the thing that's related to bookmarks, that's also pretty important. The selection pane itself really shows the list of all of the objects on the actual page itself. And that is going to be very important when you are wanting to capture the display setting in a bookmark, and especially whether or not you actually want to have something visible versus hidden. During the demonstration, we're going to see how to actually use this with bookmarks, but it's basically showing whether or not any object is currently visible or not to the user when they are consuming it, and bookmarks can toggle those. So there are some clever ways to use them as well. And as I mentioned, similar to the bookmarks pane, the selection pane can also have objects grouped together. This actually was a very welcome addition within the last year that came out for Power BI, where you can group objects together, and it again allows for much better organization. When actually creating bookmarks and toggles, you can actually toggle the visibility of the entire group on or off rather than every object underneath it, which actually makes bookmarks, creating them and updating them substantially easier. So many good reasons to actually use groups within Power BI. All right, and then obviously the grouped objects underneath there. So let's go ahead and dive into a demonstration on really, kind of understanding the capture and data displays, and how to actually use them in some kind of fun and creative ways. There we are. So This is actually a video that I did earlier this year. So the great thing with a lot of the stuff that I do is I both have demonstrations for them, and I have additional resources if you want to go back and watch this demo again later. So this will be something that will be available in the links at the end of the presentation. But I had this from a client scenario where they wanted buttons at the top that basically allowed you, the user, to click and move up and down between hierarchy levels. So in this case, I can click once, I can go from quarter, month, or day on multiple visuals. This saves the user the hassle of having to individually toggle up, basically do that 4 different times. That's it's a lot of clicks, it's a lot of mouse movement, and that takes a lot of time. So they wanted just a quick and easy way to switch between each level. So I ended up using Bookmarks to create the selection for them, achieving that effect. And like I said, the state that's being captured right now is part of data. Anytime I make a hierarchy change up or down in there, that is a state that can be captured that is included in the data state. So I'll go ahead and show a demonstration of that. I also want to show you how I'm actually creating the buttons here that can toggle in terms of active and inactive. Notice that when I click on them, it goes from quarter, month, and day, and it goes from dark to light. I actually have 2 versions of each button here at the top, same size and sitting on top of each other. And when I click one of the light ones to activate, say, month, what that actually does is part of the bookmark activation is it hides the button I just clicked, and then it unhides a button with a darker formatted color. So it essentially has the achieved effect of a darkened color. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a couple of selection panes over here, and we're going to kind of walk just through how to do this. Turn on zoom it. Here we go. So there we go, zoom in a little bit. So you can see that up here, I actually have 2 versions of each one, quarter selected, not selected. Same thing with month and day. So there's actually 1 version hidden and 1 version not hidden of each. So let's go ahead and create a new bookmark. I'm going to create a quarter bookmark so we can walk through and just see the effects of this. I'm going to move this up to the quarter. Same thing with this one. We just zoom out for a second to do that. All right, so I've set the state for the visuals that I want. And for the buttons here at the top, I want to go ahead and unhide this one, hide this one. So now the selected quarter is showing, but this one needs to be switched. I want the unselected month now to be visible. So check that, check that. There we go. So now the page is set up on how I would want it to be after I click the quarter state, or the quarter bookmark, essentially. So I'm going to go, and here's where the selected visuals comes into play. I don't want it to update all the visuals on the entire page. I only care about the buttons. So I'm going to hold shift and select those. And in this case, I only care about these 4 visuals. So I've selected just the items that I care about updating. I don't want it to accidentally update anything else on this page. So I'm going to click add, and let's just call this bookmark, or just call this quarter test. Let's talk about the different states that I have. So I have in here data, display, and current page. I do want data to be checked because that will affect the hierarchy level that I have. Display will be the one that resets or updates my buttons over here. Current page I don't need, so I'm going to uncheck that because I don't care about it navigating back to this page. And then the last thing I want to do is not select all visuals. Instead, I want to have selected visuals chosen. There we go. So now I can go ahead and just test this. I'm going to select month view. There we go. It's at the month. And if I go to quarter test, select that, you can see that it updated everything and it moved it back to that quarter level. So we can see 2 things in action. We can see a unique way to use bookmarks in the sense that a lot of people don't think that hierarchy levels are something you can toggle with them versus filters. And another great example of how we can use it to toggle the visibility of objects to make things kind of look like they're active versus inactive in terms of those button states there at the top. And as long as you have the right action assigned on any of these buttons, just as an example, I've selected month. We have that month view bookmark assigned to it. So that's really the only other thing is you just need to make sure that the buttons have the appropriate thing assigned to them whenever you are having any of those inactive ones chosen. So in this point, or at this point, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave this open for questions. Let me turn back on my camera for this state. There we go. Yeah, and are there any questions in the chat on kind of the fundamentals of bookmarks or some of the ways that you can utilize the data or display options?
Yeah, I don't see any questions here right now.
Okay, perfect. and continue to move on. What I'll have as well, like I said, in the PDF, there will be some references available in here for you to be able to further explore a lot of these, some great docs by Microsoft, and then also some playlists that I have as well on a lot of cool videos when it comes to bookmarks. Okay. So another one that we really, that I think is really powerful is being able to configure and format buttons within Power BI. So buttons are, again, one of my favorite features that very often pair with bookmarks, but they also do a lot of other stuff. So let's spend just a couple minutes talking about what buttons can do, and then I'll also go into some examples of ways that we can use them as well. All right. So primarily the buttons that we have in Power BI can be created and customized quite substantially. You know, we take a look over here on the right. Let me get my laser pointer. Beautiful, there you go. You can see that some of the basic buttons that can be created in Power BI, and then even with the option of having a blank button there at the bottom, which can give you a lot of flexibility and customization over how to really make some unique and creative looking buttons. Just need to keep recalling to click this off. There we go. All right. Now overall, you have 4 different states that can be configured when it comes to button configurations. It used to be 3. They just added a 4th with the recent addition of drill through and page navigation, but primarily you have your idle, hover, and selected, meaning what does the button look like when it's inactive? What does it look like when you hover your mouse over it? And then what does it look like when you click it? There's a new 4th one, as I just said, that's related to disabled, so that is only relevant when you have page or drill through navigation assigned. The assignable actions are pretty extensive these days. The back button, which just automatically includes when you ever are adding a drill through option between pages. You can, like I said, assign a bookmark. There's a way to actually pop up the Q&A panel, so that allows people to type in natural language questions. It can take the user to a web URL, and then recently we now have the page and drill through navigation, which will allow users to assign a button to either drill through to a certain page with filters or just navigate to a certain page as well. So many different ways to utilize buttons these days. Knowing that, though, we can actually very quickly just hop into our second demo and then see some very interesting ways to configure and utilize page navigation, utilize buttons. This one. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and start and actually have a conversation on this page for us and just talk about how I actually configured these buttons here at the top. So it doesn't really matter which one I select. I'm going to go ahead and I'll just pick the day button and then come over here and talk about the panes that we have in here. So there's some important things to discuss in this section. So pretty much all of the things you see here have the option to be configured in multiple states. And what I mean when I say that is that if, let's say, just I open up the button, the fill, and you can see that I actually have a few different things happening. There is my idle state, so default state, meaning what is the button doing for this specific thing when you're not hovering over it, when you're not clicking it. So in this case, I have a fill color of a certain color. Now when I hover over it, notice it gets darker. So that is my hover state. You can see that the color is a little bit darker. So that kind of creates the effect of, it's indicating to the user just a little bit that this can be clicked, it can be interacted with in some way. And then of course that one additional option is the on press, which is essentially what happens when you interact with it. So it gives people a tactile feel, a tactile feedback that makes sure that they can click on it and really get have it do something for them, react in some way. So it's very similar to like web design experiences where you want to really just have it clear that, hey, click me, and have this button be something that can be interacted with for the user experience. I did mention the fact that there isn't disabled. That is only relevant to page and drill through navigation, but that is a 4th state that can be configured. And that these same menu items are available for the text, so I can change the text for each state. And if I wanted to add an individual icon, those can be changed as well. So all of these can be configured within this environment to really very, very dynamically customize these depending on your requirements, your aesthetic preferences. I personally just prefer to go simple and kind of just have those 3 colors. And then this, that one that's toggled for the dark mode, that really doesn't have too much in there other than the filled color itself is the same color for all states. So there is no difference between the idle, the hover, or the click. So it basically just has a permanent dark color button. It makes it clear it can't be interacted with because the states aren't changing as I hover over it, and there's no action assigned to it either. So bookmark none, just because there's no point to click and activate a bookmark for it if month has already been activated. So that one basically just acts as a static button that just sits there until you navigate to a different one. That one gets hidden, and then now you have essentially the inactive button again to be able to click back to go to that bookmark state. So really useful ways to customize those, and I would highly recommend taking advantage of the states, and don't just create a button that just says some action name. Actually make sure that it's formatted either through text, icons, outlines, fills, in some way that gives it that rich user experience where like, hey, you can click me. Now there's a couple of other things that I built recently that I've been really happy that came out in Power BI is some fun buttons that I built where I can actually use images to create the end result of these. So let me click them a little bit and just kind of show you what I mean. Lock those objects. So kind of have an on and off toggle switch here. I have a little slider bar that's a DeLorean that's flying back and forth. So both of these were built and done using a series of images that you can add to them. And just like with all the other states, I have kind of three primary states. There is the default. If I hover over it, you can see that gets filled in. So that's a second image that I actually did in Photoshop. So there's state 1, state 2, and then if I press it, the third state is the click one, and then this will actually toggle the top button to hide, and the bottom button that's on there that was hidden, which is the other one, that's going to show up. And then now, the new state basically has been activated. So it has it can activate a bookmark, do other things on the page, but then the button itself will have it on and off toggle effect. Same with the little slider over in the corner. So let me go ahead and show you in this a couple of them. I'm actually going to use the Millennium Falcon visual over here, or the button over on this side. And the thing that I want to draw attention to is in the fill state. So we originally just had options for fill color. And with a recent update a couple of months ago, we now have that option to add an image. And when you do that, by default, it automatically adds the same image to each of these three different states, or four technically. Now, I initially thought when I did a video on this a few months back, there we go, that you could only add one image per button. I later found out watching one of the videos from Ruth over at Kerbal that yes, even though the one single image will get added to all four states, after you add it to the first one, you can come into the second, third, and fourth, delete it, and then add a different image. So I actually have multiple states in here. There's my idle. The hover one is basically another one that I created. The third click one is this, and then when you actually toggle it, that new button that basically becomes unhidden is that one that has the slider all the way on the other side, and it repeats in the opposite direction. The idle, on hover, on click. So a total of 6 buttons were made, or 6 images were made for this, and then I just added that image into each of the appropriate states in here. As we can see, each of these, there's the if you actually looked and hovered over that, you'd notice that there's a different name for each of these images. So it really gives you a lot of creativity to create pretty cool and unique buttons. You can also assign GIFs, so you could actually have a series of animated buttons that are just sitting there kind of, maybe wiggling around, or it has a bit of like a reflective sheen that moves across it, or something that occasionally will pop up a click me on there. So there's a lot of ways to add breadcrumb trails and little markers to help guide the users to want to or even realize that they can click on one of these things to use it to, one, change the button, and two, do some other action on the page itself. There. Move this back to questions section. So as far as buttons goes, are there any general questions that are coming up for these?
Yeah, we're just sorting out the chat window, so give us a couple of give us a couple of minutes, and we'll sort that out and let you know shortly.
Okay. So nothing immediately then, yeah.
Nothing that we can see right now, but we think that there's a technical issue, and we're just sorting that out right now. Yeah.
No problem.
No worries, and no need to have my my face up there either.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Thanks so much, Reid.
I mean, it's sometimes it's just nice to have a little friendly face just hanging out in the corner. Let me make sure my camera's back off.
Sure,
yeah, okay, good. All right. So, like I said, links that are up here, you don't have to worry about writing down. I will have those later on available when I provide a link in the chat to the PDF for for this slide deck. All right. We might actually get enough time to cover report tooltips at the very end. But this one's going to be a nice, big, hefty conversation, which is measure-based formatting. There's, I would say the term's a little bit nebulous. So like sometimes you can call it conditional formatting. I prefer to call some other features where you can apply it in Power BI measure-based formatting, because there's a lot of ways you can actually apply it to text and some other cool stuff that we'll see in a minute. But it's one of the things that I think has expanded very well in Power BI in the last 12 months. So the traditional conditional formatting that we've had is essentially the formatting that you can see here, where we can, on a matrix or a regular Power BI table, we have the options, for background color, font color, data bars, icons and URLs. Again, let me get my laser pointer. So these are the primary ways that we can add various things to a table visual to really help break up the monotony of text and draw attention to important values that really want to stand out for us. Like in this case, we can very quickly see that for the first row, page views here is the highest, but immediately our eyes can notice that for the 1548 for the search field, regardless of the data, we can just tell that this row has the highest for this value without having to do mental math and compare all of them. So there's a lot of useful reasons that we would want to include conditional formatting just to help visualize the data within a table. Now let's talk about each one of these and kind of what the features and limitations are. So typically the settings are accessed in the fields well that you just saw. You can click the down arrow next to the item and it pops up and gives you the options. Technically, you can also go to the format tab and you can customize it there, though that's usually more mouse clicks than I care to engage with. So I very rarely access it from that environment. Now for background and font color, these are essentially the same when it comes to the logic that can be applied. It's really the only difference in terms of their features and limitations is, am I applying this logic to the background color, right? Am I applying this logic to the font color? And other than that, the things that I'm showing you are identical between the two. So they have a standard color scale that we can see here between a min and a max, whether or not that is the automatically determined lowest and highest value, or a min and a max number itself. And you do have an option to select diverging if you wanted to include a third color in the middle. Rules is if you want to set it up yourself. So you basically can come into here, set up one rule at a time, basically express the scenario between an if and then a color, and then set as many rules in here as you would like to apply that kind of color logic that you need to. Field value, the last one. In this case, we're not going to discuss it a ton in this topic, or in this presentation, but it is a way to basically bake in the logic into a measure, and then you can use it repeatedly. So rather than using rules, I can set up those rules in a DAX formula, and then I can have that in the model, and then I can call upon that as many times as I want in as many visuals and tables, and just continually use this over and over again if I needed to. So there's a lot of ways to basically help save yourself some time for that. There will be a link at the end to a video that talks about that a bit further, but it's a very useful way to help reproduce your logic, so you don't have to continuously recreate your rule sets, as an example, over and over and over again. For data bars, this one's pretty straightforward. There's not a ton of customization, but just like in Excel, in Power BI, it builds that bar in and really just has a few options of either the calculated lowest and highest value, a fixed one for min and max, and then pick your colors. And one kind of fun feature is being able to turn off the data labels, essentially show a bar only, which will then just hide the value itself and create like a KPI column that you'll have there if the size is more important than the actual raw number. Icons is a fun one that came out last year. I was really happy when they finally incorporated this. I previously used ASCII icons and other emojis to kind of build this myself with DAX, but for people who don't want to have to code, this is a really nice way to add a lot of these features just out of the box, especially with the style sets, where it can automatically create and group those arrows by percentages and everything else. So really nice tool set. You can also import custom icon sets into Power BI Desktop in the form of a JSON file. I did a video last year that actually walked through that and really had some fun additional things where I added in some Zelda hearts and a few other kind of just fun little icons that you can incorporate in there. So if you have icons that your company specifically uses, that's a nice way to incorporate those directly in with whatever color scheme you want to use for that. Last one, and one of the more recent ones that was added here is the actual ability to have a URL. So you can have whatever value is showing here, and then you can actually have that taken to a friendly link that takes you to a website. So in this case, each of these product names for top selling product could also take you to the page for that product detail. So it's a nice way of incorporating a URL into the measure and one additional thing for users to be able to click. That can only be based on field value because you do need to have a DAX measure that tells the model and the visual basically what URL should I navigate to. Ideally, it's a concatenated URL that is including the product number or name that takes you to an appropriate web page for that. See that there? Each row would be an active link to a website.
Nice.
Recently, they also just added the option to now start applying conditional formatting to subtotals and totals. This has been requested for a long time, and you have been able to do this in DAX, but it hasn't been something that's been available in Power BI just due to the limitations of and then the design of how it was intended. But now you can actually apply it to both the value and the subtotal, giving you a result like this. The one thing to note is thresholds and ranges must be manually set. So the automatic min and max can't be determined anymore because it's having to go across values and subtotals, and it's not. A lot of times it might not be a fair comparison. So you do need to individually set those based on rules when you are doing this. And it has to be as numbers, not percentages, unless you're basically including in there like a decimal number to represent a percentage. But you can't actually set it as percent and then say 33. Some other applications that I was mentioning earlier, and why I like the term measure-based formatting, where you can take essentially the conditional formatting logic in some situations, but apply it to other things in visuals and objects in Power BI reporting. So whenever you see this little FFX symbol in here, if you're on the latest version at least, that will indicate that you can apply some type of measure-based formatting to it. So that means I can dynamically change the font color, the background color. I can also change the text to have it be something that changes based off of refreshes or filter selections. And the two primary things that currently can be changed with this are, like I said, our text and color. My wish and hope is that at some point, as this continues to grow, they'll eventually start to incorporate this in other things, like maybe font or even potentially some other settings like the font size of the axis labels and things like that. But they're continuously doing a good job of expanding this out. So, but today, this is the two things that will be applied for it. All right, so let's go.
We do have some questions as well, so if you
Sure.
just wanted to let you know that the chat's been resolved, and we can do some questions when you're ready.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just do a couple of questions, and I'll hop into the demo.
Okay, great. We do have some feedback, which is nice, but be careful with people with vision impairment. And then And then we also have a question from John, which John asks, can you explain why we use the selected visuals? Because he usually uses all visuals.
Yeah, so I mean, the issue with all visuals is, let's say that you happen to have a slicer on your page that was selected to year equals 2015. If you create a bookmark, and even if you clear that filter or do anything else, if you ever activate the bookmark again, it's now going to reset that page to having that slicer equal year 2015. So, it's very rare that I ever want every single visual to be captured and then set back to that state on the page during that capture selection, because I didn't care about that slicer in my filter selection. So the selected visuals make sure that your bookmark states are updating only the visuals that were relevant to that bookmark. And most of the time, your bookmark, it doesn't need to update every single object on the page. It's only updating maybe these 3 slicers or anything else, because it can accidentally reset your, if you're doing any cross highlighting between visuals, your filters pane, any drill through options. So there's a much higher risk of accidental filter toggling if you use all versus selected.
Awesome. Okay. I hope that answers your question, John. And post a follow-up if you like. Just for those who aren't reading the chat, yes, it is being recorded and will be available on the Power BI channel. Also, Pawal wanted to ask, not sure, but for your months on the month graphs, they're sorted alphabetically, April through August. How would you fix this in the sorting January through February?
It's a good question. Oh yeah, you're right. I'll actually have to fix that. So normally, they should be sorted in April, August, December. Oh, actually, I think March, May. I think there's just some missing months in the data. So they are chronological. So you did catch that it goes from April to August. There's just no data for those months in between. The demo data set that I had in here just has some missing months, and rather than show the gaps, I have it collapsed, so it's only showing months with data. But if you do need to sort a column, that's simply just the option that's up here, which is you select like a column anywhere in the model. Let's see, I wanted to sort my month name column by my month number column. So if I wanted to sort this by this, I can select the month, which is in this case text, and I can say sort by the numerical column, which will mean that like now it's going to sort by something 1 through 12, and it won't sort alphabetically. It will sort based off of the numerical rank order in there. So that's how you can sort one column by another. I'll go ahead and pause any of the remaining questions and go ahead and jump into the demo for conditional formatting now. So essentially what I have in front of us, it shows the end result of the 4 types of conditional formatting that I was kind of mentioning earlier, where we have the background color, data bar, icon set, and also something that actually allows you to select a URL. So I'm going to go ahead and move over here, show you how to apply each of those. Pretty straightforward. So let's start with this. Like I said, my personal way that I like to navigate to it is I use the dropdown next to each of the values over here. I'm going to select sales. I'm going to say conditional formatting. You can see the options that I have there, and I'm just going to go ahead and add to the background color in here. Let that pop up. Beautiful. And I'll go ahead and just keep this. Now I will mention, by the way, the min and the max value here can be changed, but even if you change the theme, it still will usually result to the default theme 2 primary colors in here. So if I wanted it to match my theme a little bit better, I can change it to my red and my green. And in this case too, I'll actually, because I don't want it to be representative of good and bad, I'm actually going to do more of like a, let's just for funsies do a light blue to like a darker blue, like a darker purple. There you go. Just add a bit of splash of color in there. And you can see that I have the option to say values only, values and totals only. So I will do values and totals. And you can see that in here I do have those options. Just to mention it, I could do color scale, I could do rules, and then if I wanted to supply a measure with my rule set in it that's returning hex codes, I could use the field value here. But I'm just going to do a color scale. I'm going to hit OK. And I am doing, oh yes, let's see. And because I'm doing totals, I do have to manually enter an amount. So I'm going to say minimum will be 0, and let's say maximum, I'm going to do 5 million. There we go. Should pop up. There we go. Color scale is going to show up into there. And as you can see, the limitation with that is, depending on what you're wanting to compare, you have to manually do it if you do want it to show at the total and the values level. Now for year-over-year sales, nice and easy add. If I wanted to put those data bars in there, I'm going to do the same thing. Conditional format. I'm going to go to data bars. Doing pretty good. All right, and in this case, what I actually like to do with the data bars, just as my my pro tip, is I like to do a light color, because if it's too dark, it makes it hard to read the font sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and do a light blue and negative. We kind of again very light red. I could do show bar only, which will then get rid of the data labels, but I want to keep both. Just like that. Should pop up. And as you can see, this is actually one, by the way, with a limitation where I cannot do data bars at the value and total level. Data bars are still limited only to doing just the background. The 3 that will work for both value and total is background and font and icon that we're going to apply here in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and set up my icons. And there we go. And as you can see, like I was mentioning, you do have that option for totals. I do like the fact that the style in here does come with those sets, so you can basically select a pre-configured set pretty easily. And you can even start with this. Let's say I wanted the colored arrow sets. I can select that, and then I can still come in and customize this if I wanted to, and configure this if I need to. But I'm going to go ahead and just stick with the default for now, just for demonstration purposes. There we go. Pops it into there. Again, it's not applying to the total, only to the subtotals right now, or the or only do the values at the moment. And then last but not least, I want to apply that to the top selling product in here. Come over there, conditional format, and let's go ahead and do web URL. Last one just to demonstrate for this basic one. There we go. And in this case, it's going to be based on the field URL. There we go. So I'll show you this measure here in just a second. But basically what I'm populating into here is to have a product URL to return a link to click on. The goal isn't to really walk through how to create a dynamic URL, just to show you how to apply it. But now each of these has a link. The link isn't anything fancy. You can, again, like set up a measure that concatenates and grabs the product SKU and creates could create a URL link that would change per row. This is a pretty basic measure that just has one URL. But the highlight of this that I'm wanting to point out is the fact that as long as it's returning text, in this case, there's the text output, and it has to be set as a data category of web URL. So that's the important part here, is it does need to have that data category set. And at that point, it will allow you to specify that. And if you clicked it, it will take you to a web page. So you can, from a basic perspective, you can see that the four main types that we can apply to tables, that's been around for a few years, and as they've added pieces in the last like 2 or so for those icons and web URLs. But then the other one that I've found very valuable is to be able to change a lot of things dynamically for different attributes in visuals. So in this case, some of the things that can change and update with measure-based formatting. So we can actually see here, if I click this, you can notice that this button down here, it actually had a couple things happen to it. So this is something that I'll have video links to that I'm not going to get into to talk about the drill through specifically. But what this is doing is it allows me to select any of these elements in here. And you can just see that there's parts of this button that are changing. Notice that the tooltip text actually has one selection in here. It's indicating to the user what they need to do. So if I make a selection like it's asking, the text here changes and the tooltip text also changes for this button. These are both attributes that are a measure that is basically supplying this. So I'm going to go ahead and select this here. There we go. So like I said, anytime you can see those little icons, the F of X symbols over there, that's where you can apply these. Notice that I've actually done this twice. There is a third one that I could apply down here, but I have a static thing in here, and then these mean that I have 2 measures basically indicating the destination and the enabled tooltip. So in this case, let me go ahead and just open this up to show you one of these windows. And you can see that field value, like I said, and it's basically supplying this drill through button tooltip, which right over here, go ahead and look that up. Basically, it's depending on the selection that I have over on the left, whether or not it's the industry detail page that I want to drill through to, or the marketing details. If I change that, then that, yep, see, there you go. So that also changes. So that's what's happening here. It's concatenating this text right here, and it's basically just grabbing my selection from this slicer and the page. So that's where it's getting that little tooltip pop-up right there. Both the button text itself changes and the actual tooltip on top of it. So lots of ways to dynamically change these and make it very clear to the user what they're going to do. Again, I'm kind of mostly just highlighting a couple of these things. I have a very detailed video that walks through this that will be available in the references links at the end of this, just because it's not enough time to cover the entire breadth of it. But you can see just as a great showcase example of ways to use conditional measure-based formatting to change certain attributes in these buttons and everything in Power BI. And in a very basic level, what you can do just for a nice and simple update is I'm going to go ahead and update one of these visuals here at the top, and then I'll leave it open for questions here at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my selection pane, and I'm just going to update one of these cards here at the top, make it nice and easy. So in theory, what I want to do is I want to update the color. I want this to change between 2 different things for the sales amount. So essentially the end result is this. You can see that these change the color depending on some variable, something that I've created with DAX, as just another example of measure-based formatting that can be applied to a color. So that's my USA card. That's the value in here. So there's my little card there at the top. And we can see in these settings that I have data label. I have the color with a measure that's being supplied to determine what color it should be. So that card KPI, pretty straightforward calculation here. And I kept it simple for a reason, but basically it has two hex colors. There's my red hex code, there's my green hex code. And if sales is in this case greater than 5 million, return green, otherwise return red. So this can be simple, this can be complicated, as much as you want in either direction. But what we can see is it's just as long as the measure is returning some hex code, and it has to be text wrapped in quotes, then that can be supplied into these fields with that little symbol. If I clear this out, there we go. So static color, and if I click that, then I can say, hey, use this measure to apply that. So there's a lot of other ways to demonstrate this and tons of ways to apply it, but it really gives you the two main cornerstones, which is the fact that I can change my my color on a lot of attributes, or I can also change the text on a lot of objects or visuals themselves. Many different ways to add those breadcrumb trails and like many KPIs in a report. A few other things that I can continue to go through, but I want to now leave this open for questions.
Excellent. We're at 13 minutes. I didn't want to interrupt you there. And we do have a couple of questions. Thanks so much, Reid. I really loved the measure. Okay, so what are the kind of things we should be aware of while working with the bookmarks, especially for newbies? I tried them, but it was hard to comprehend and maintain.
Yeah, so great question. In general, I think this goes back to the previous question. The number one thing that I'd recommend doing is when you make a bookmark, don't ever use all visuals. Like 99% of the time, near all the time, when you're making a bookmark, you don't need it to update everything on the page, every single bookmark in the filters pane. So make sure that you select the visuals that you care about, or slicers, objects. Make sure you basically, in the selection pane, choose the items that you care about updating and and toggling, and then change it from all visuals to selected visuals. That will be the number one way to prevent a lot of headache when building those things. Is just that one recommended technique. And then the other thing too is using groups. So grouping in the selection pane. Again, you can toggle visibility at the group level. So if I have 18 visuals that as an example that I want to toggle visible and hidden with the bookmark, I don't want to have to go through and when I'm creating the bookmark, select 18 visuals, toggle them all off, create the bookmark. Instead, add them all to a group, and then at the group level, toggle and untoggle that. So those would be the two things that I would recommend taking away with you. If you can do both of those, it will save you a lot of time and headache. Totally
agree on the grouping function. We only recently released that, I think at the end of last year, and it has really changed the game with bookmarks. It's lowered your click rates from like 200 down to like 10 or 15. I was talking to Chris Hamill about that, so you're absolutely right. Also, someone asked if this is going to be available for downloading, and I'm just asking if it was the PBIX. And so if you could answer that. And then also the next question, it's a bit of a off topic, but it's what tool are you using for the laser pointer?
Oh, so this is actually something that's built into PowerPoint. You actually go to the lower corner, there's kind of presenter tools in the lower left, and there's an option for a laser, a pen, a highlighter. I think pen, pen just lets you draw, but you have that really nice little laser pointer, and I've been using that now ever since I discovered it, because it's so helpful to be able to point to things on the page, and it helps to make sure you're not just staring at a static image forever.
Awesome. Okay, and that's basically all for the questions right now, other than, will you be sharing the PBIX file? But if anyone else has a question, please post it now. We'll give it a minute or so. We've got 10 more minutes left. So we'd love to hear your questions. And hey, Reid, if you wanted to cut and paste that into the chat window, those links, you could do that. You can either send it to me and I can post.
Yep. What I'll do is I will paste a link to where you can download this entire PDF, which will then have the list of links itself in there. That will just be available on my site. And this deck I save and convert to a PDF, and then you'll be able to access all of the slides plus links in there. As regards to the PBIX files, those Each of the ones that I demoed through is also associated to and related to some of the videos that I've done that are included in a lot of these playlists. So you'll have access to all of those and more. If you go to watch the YouTube videos, there's an option to go to the blog files section. And as long as you subscribe to the blog that I have, which is totally free, then you have access to, I don't even know, there's got to be at least 50 or 60 different PBX files related to a lot of different topics. So there's a plethora of material out there that I have for learning and just downloading a file to be able to play around with, including everything that I've talked about plus substantially more information.
Hey, could we go to your blog if that's okay, just to show folks?
Yes. Quickly unshare and share.
And we're still going. It hasn't. The live event has not stopped. We're just going to a blog here to show folks Reed's blog. So stay with us.
There we go. Yep. So basically, right here, all of the blogs for a lot of stuff that I've done. Actually, two of my favorites recently is I just had a guest video that I did with Alina that walks through actually how to do alignment for single value cards. I walked through recently how to do text and CSV by example. So it's a great short plug just for the fact that I do a video every Tuesday, 5 to 10 minutes on tons of Power BI topics, and you basically have an option to just sign up right here. That will give you the access to go to the blog files page, which just has a password that's provided in the welcome email. But yeah, this is basically the resource for individuals for to get all of the material for kind of playing around and self-learning with a lot of the videos that I do or presentations. But to the speaking events thing, as I mentioned, I'm going to throw up links here in just a minute, but it will be here a little bit later today. I have a page that specifically has all of my speaking events. Fun little Power BI report that actually shows what talk that I've done, where in the world that was actually given, plus a lot of kind of fun stats around that. The number of actual kilometers flown between the locations, if I was actually to calculate that between everywhere. But yours will be at the top of this page here, just a little bit, where you'll have access to download that PDF, and then there will be the Microsoft webinar spot here just at the top. It's a collective list of every talk that I've given at every location, plus the original links to those as well. But this is actually a good opportunity just to go ahead and provide this little piece right here. So this is going to, I'll update this in a sec. But you'll actually get a discount code here in just a minute. And oops, one quick sec. I'm actually just going to type this in now. So this will be August. There we go. That will be the discount code. Nice. So what I do is I provide a discount code for anybody who basically attends any of these webinars. It just allows them a 30% off basically anything on my site for consulting services or templates. But the presentation PDF link is there at the top. The QR code will take you to my main website, and this will be where the actual PDF will be uploaded in about 30 minutes or so. I also will have the link to my YouTube channel. That is where most of the content that I generate goes up. I do occasionally write a blog post, but 99% of my content is just YouTube videos. And I also just encourage people to go ahead and reach out on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer questions for a lot of these things, especially for people getting started. That's how I learned. So I would love to give back for individuals who are also just curious about the do's and don'ts or features in Power BI. So highly encourage you, add me on LinkedIn and message me on there. The last thing that I'll mention here, just kind of as a thank you to individuals for attending, and it's also just encourages people to check out my blog. I provide QR code here that signs, what this does is it signs you up for my blog or just enters your name in a hat if you're already a subscriber. And the person who basically gets drawn out of the hat, I will arrange a 1 hour session of consulting with you. So you can pick my brain on anything related to Power BI. You basically just get 1 hour of my time to to pick my brain on knowledge and expertise.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, people have been very happy whenever they've won one of those, and usually it's hour of course is never enough time, but and it's also I really enjoy being able to help people out and get them started on this stuff. Any other questions?
I'll just give it another minute. We have 4 more minutes left. But I actually just went and signed up on your site. It was really easy. I entered my details, and then I
Perfect.
immediately got an email asking me to confirm my email. So it was super easy. It took maybe 10 seconds to do.
That's awesome. Yep. Yeah, I make sure to do the double opt-in. That way, people don't accidentally sign up or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there isn't another question right now. We'll give it another minute because, sometimes it takes a minute to sign up. Please add any questions that you might have while we have Reid here on the call. And remember to make sure you enter the raffle. I might just do something as well. For the person who wins the raffle, Reid, how about I throw in a Power BI 5 t-shirt? How about I do that?
That would be great. Yeah. And
I'll do
I can
that.
get the mailing address from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will send that when you get the when you have the winner and you have their size. I will send that to you to forward to the winner.
Perfect. And I'm going to use this opportunity to, with that, I'll actually send a sticker to somebody. So I just got these produced for individuals who've been following me for a while. I can actually throw up there we go.
Love these.
Yeah. I got, there was a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, that I had from some of the other businesses that I've been seeing who's made laptop stickers. So like, all right, well, like, why haven't I done this yet? I need to make a laptop sticker for my company. And because I've been called the visualization wizard by, now for a couple of years, it's kind of my nickname. Like, why don't I just make that into an avatar? So commission an artist, and this is the result, is this, kind of alter ego of myself that I have here. It's probably one of my favorite versions of the sticker, but I just recently got these printed, and these I'll actually send a few of these as well to the raffle winner. So you'll get a couple copies of this as a laptop sticker to be able to use as you wish.
Nice. A couple of we just had a person ask if we could post the presentation PDF again, or are we going to? I think we're going to include that in the that's YouTube channel, right, as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to have you just provide the link to this, which will then, have you take it to the site, which is going to have that presentation PDF download option right there. So there, all of my presentations will always continuously get uploaded to this site that has a full history of every talk and link that I've done. I just recently passed the 50 mark, which was kind of a nice milestone. I'm at, after I put it in today, this will be 52 presentations that I've done under Havens Consulting.
Well, congratulations, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's it's one of my favorite parts of the job.
Yep. Okay, well, we don't have any other questions. Oh, well, hang on a second. Wow, looks very cool and appropriate. That was good.
There's just the right amount of fun in there. I'm assuming if I don't share my screen, I'm assuming my camera's partially working. But let's see. If I click stop sharing, you should see me, and then I can see if I can. There we go. I hope it's gonna. Oh yeah, there we go. It focuses on it. So that's one of the stickers, and then these are the samples that I just got made, and then there's the.
I don't know that we can see it. Can we see it? Let's see. I think we have to do this.
There we go.
And go.
Because I am sharing my video at least.
Yeah, I know you're sharing. I'm not sure if we can see that.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, I'm just asking here, can we see it? Congrats on your 50 presentations. You're a great speaker. Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Okay, well, with that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We know that you can spend your time with anybody, and you spent it with Reid today, so we really appreciate it. Enjoy Power BI, and Reid, thank you so much. Deepak, thank you for producing the call. Reid, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for giving back always.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'll see you guys next time.